أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقالوا إن هي إلا حياتنا الدنيا وما نحن بمبعوثين صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين. I bear witness that without Allah there is no God. I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is the last, the final messenger of Allah, after whom no prophet old or new will come. And I begin in the name of Allah, that the Merciful. It is important, perhaps even essential, for each and every one of us to read the Quran, some portion of the Quran, even if it is a verse, a chapter, any section, anyway, every day. And there are several reasons for this. One is that even if we may not understand some of the things that are said in the Quran, the ideas remain in our minds, so that when a Quranic function is given, when Jummah Khutbah is explained, you are able to relate to that particular verse that you may have read before and say, now I understand it, because it will be explained at some future time. In most cases, you will probably understand what the Quran says, because there are many simple verses of the Quran that you can easily read and understand. But one of the important things we need to note about the Quran is that, unfortunately, many Muslims think that the prophets who come and bring the Quran or bring other divine scriptures, the prophets before Moses, David, Solomon, Jesus Christ, Ram, Krishna, all of these, that they came merely to provide the rituals of religion, to teach us how to fast, how to pray, how to give zakat, and these material things in life. And that will guarantee us a place in heaven, what to believe, what kind of approach and attitude you should have. But the Quran, in consonance, in agreement with other scriptures as well, gives us an additional perspective, an additional concept and idea of the function of a prophet of God, the leader of a religion. And the functions of prophets are specific. They are given because they are guided by Allah, but they have an important role to play in society. And prophets, of course, are human beings. They will die. And therefore it is necessary and essential for them to have successors. People will come after them. And the Quran is quite clear on this, that we will raise up among you successors, caliphs, who will explain your religion for you and give you the religion that will provide you with peace. In many other faith systems, the word used to describe the successors of prophets give us an idea of the function of not only the prophet but the leaders themselves. For example, among Jews you will hear the words rabbi, which comes from the Arabic word Rabb. And Rabb means one who nurtures you. In other words, a religious teacher who can nurture you in your moral and spiritual development. That's the function, or supposed to be the function, of a rabbi. It doesn't mean that all these terms used in the different religions are actually put into practice by those who carry the names. But that was the intention. Among Christians, you have what is called a pastor. A pastor is one who looks after sheep and cares for them and protects them and see that they grow and develop. And similarly, as a pastor for his, as a shepherd for his flock, as it is called metaphorically, the congregation, the Jamaat is called a flock. The pastor is there and required to nurture them. Unfortunately, that may not be so in every case, because many pastors seek their own interests and use the flock to enhance and encourage their own more material development, and acquire quite a lot of money and planes and houses and traveling and so on. It has become a business. You find also in the case of Hinduism, you have the term guru, and guru means one who really lifts you up, one who can take care of you and help you with your burdens and your challenges and your problems in life. And all of these that are described in other faith systems are used in the Quran in different words to describe the role and functions of prophets. And so prophets do not only come to give us the rituals of religion. Prophets come in order to help us use the tenets of religion, the guidelines given by religion, so that we can build up our soul and our personality and our character. It is important, therefore, for us to understand what in fact is our soul, and how can we lift up our soul, how can we raise it again if it has fallen down. And this is one of the important things about life, that every individual in life has certain challenges that affects our spiritual self, our mind, our thoughts, our personality, our character. We can go up or down. There are times in which we are exuberant, we are happy, we are because we have succeeded. I've acquired a house, I've acquired a building, I've acquired a child, I've acquired education, a job, whatever it is, and it makes us happy. That happiness is not something physical we feel in our body, but in our heart, in our mind, in our soul, we actually feel that happiness. It is important to notice that there is to understand that the soul is different from the body. That even when the body dies, the soul exists. If you look at someone that you know who has passed away, a grandparent, a parent, a friend, a relative, a neighbor, and you think of that individual, or even you think of an individual in times past that you have never seen, but you have heard about, perhaps your parents spoke about their parents, and they will tell you certain things, and what they can tell you are really the qualities of the individual. If there were no photographs and videos in those days or paintings, they cannot describe to you, they can describe to you whether the person was fat or thin or tall or had this appearance, and you can probably imagine what they look like. But you can never be sure what the person actually was physically. But they can tell you about their personality and character, because that still remains. And all of us, when we die, our personality and character is what remains. And that's why the Quran says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Our real self has come from Allah. In other words, our real self is our soul. And what is the soul? It is a combination of attributes. The attributes of Allah. And so the Quran, in reading the Quran, if you read it every day, you will find that, especially in chapter 6, which I've been reading for the last couple of khutbahs, it tells us so much about ourselves, about the nature of the divine being, and the function of the prophets of God. In the verse I've recited, it says, وَقَوْلُوا إِنْ هِيَ إِلَّا حَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا حَيَاتُنَا الدُّنْيَا وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمَبْعُوثِينَ. They assume, people assume, that if it is that our worldly life, the life in this world, is without any merit, any value, if this world is nothing really, as some people think, then we are not of those who can be recovered, who can come back to life. Because if this life has no value, when you die, everything is gone. There's no value to it. Now, we must understand that the soul never dies. And therefore, when the Quran and even other scriptures speak about resurrection after death, it cannot mean the physical body. It cannot mean this physical body, because the physical body dies. There are some people who believe that yes, it is the physical body that will rise up again after death, come back just as you are. But then which physical body? Our physical body changes throughout life. As a child, as an adult, if a person dies at 5 or 6 years, will they be resurrected as a 5 or 6 year old person? And if a person dies at 95 years, will they be resurrected as 95 as a decrepit old person with dementia and so on? Or will they be resurrected as a teenager? What age in life, what kind of body will they have? Because our body changes. But we do know that throughout life, there are changes in our personality, how we behave, how we think, how we function. Some people are good and they become bad. Some people are bad and they become good. They change their way of life. We see that in the life of every prophet of God among their followers. You see that there are some people who are wicked and evil or did cruel things, and then they change their approach in life and they develop morality and spirituality and greatness and goodness. So it is important for us to realize that when the Quran speaks of life after death, it is really indicating to us the resurrection of our soul. And what is in fact is the resurrection of the soul? The Quran tells us, وَالَّذِي يَتَوَفَّاكُمْ in the same chapter 6. بِاللَّيْلِ وَيَعْلَمُ مَا جَرَحْتُمْ بِالنَّهَارِ ثُمَّ بَعَثَكُمْ فِيهِ لِيُقْضَى أَجَلًا مُسَمًّى ثُمَّ إِلَيْهِ مَرْجِعُكُمْ ثُمَّ يُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. And here the functions of the prophets are, one of the functions of the prophets is mentioned. But prophets do not only come to give us rituals and we have to fend for ourselves. And this is why the successors of the prophets, whether they are parents, whether they are imams, whether they are missionaries, whether they are preachers, whoever they are, we all play the role of nurturing and bringing up people and helping them through the challenges in life. And this is what we call teaching. A teacher doesn't merely teach a child, or most teachers will take up a job, not for the salary or for the fact that they have a job, but they're interested in a child and they have to pass information onto that child to make that child grow, to make that child intelligent, to make that child self-sufficient in their thinking and their functioning, in their ability to do what they are required to do in whatever field they may approach. The teacher may not know what the child will become, whether they become a doctor, a lawyer, a physician, a cook, a dentist, a tailor, whatever it is. But they will have the skills that whatever they do in life, they'll be able to do it with a amount of efficiency and in a way in which they will be successful in whatever they do. So the Quran says that there are times in life, however, when Allah takes our soul. Now, a question has been asked some time ago that the Quran says Allah takes your soul at the time of death and at the time of sleep. And those upon whom the decree of death is given, He withholds them. But those upon whom the decree of death is not given, in other words, those who are asleep, He gives you back your soul. So the question has been asked, well, there is a sentence in the Azan, morning Azan, that says, As-salatu khayrun min an-nawm. Prayer is better than sleep. And one wonders that if prayer is better than sleep, but in sleep your soul is with Allah. The Quran says Allah withholds His soul. In prayer your soul is with yourself. So really, is it that it is better to be asleep because your soul is with Allah, or better to be awake? Obviously, that interpretation cannot apply. If we look at the soul and we look at the two expressions, you will see that when the Quran says Allah withholds your soul, it means that your soul is incapable of functioning, of growing, of developing the qualities. And what is the soul? It is a combination of attributes of forgiveness and charity and kindness and mercy and all these beneficence and patience and all of these things. So when you are asleep, you don't have that capacity to be forgiving. You don't have the capacity to be patient. You don't have the capacity. You are on an operating table, or you are in your bed and you are asleep, or you're in whatever condition and you're inactive. Your soul cannot function. It is virtually dead, but the soul does not actually die because it doesn't have organs as a physical body. And so when the Quran speaks of the death and raising to life, it means that your soul is not functioning in order to develop itself, and therefore one has to find circumstances and opportunity and guidance and guidelines to be able to recover that soul. And that is what is stated here when the Quran says, if you focus only on the worldly life and you don't think that you have a soul, you have a personality to deal with, then this life is nothing. Your soul is your real self. And people who adopt that attitude, they feel that they cannot be recovered. They cannot rise up again. When the Quran uses the word mabusun, it means that which rises and can move forward. And this is a challenge that many people face in life. That sometimes, because of situations in life, we go into states of what is called depression, we go into frustration, we become flustered, and we find ourselves unable to function. Some people describe it as going down into a deep hole, as if you're buried in all of your troubles and worries, whether they are financial problems, whether they are relationship problems, whether they are, problems with dealing with situations. Children may have examinations, or you may have an interview coming up for a job, or whatever they may be. There may be natural disasters that are impending, a storm is coming or so, and you don't know what to do. You're in a state of fear, you're in a state of anxiety. So it doesn't only mean that you're mentally ill, but you're in situations whereby you're unable to function, you're unable to exercise patience. You're in pain, and you find that I can't wait to get to the doctor, I can't wait to take the medication, I can't wait to have this particular treatment. So it is as if the Quran describes this, therefore, as a situation in which you feel so down and out that you think you cannot recover, because all you're looking for is the material things to make you well again. So if I'm in pain, I don't look for patients to help me through the pain. I look for medication, I look for a tablet, I look for a doctor, I look for some method in order to deal with that issue. I'm not dealing with it through my soul by saying, perhaps I'll go in prayer and see how it can relieve me. But there are many people who can testify that when they are faced with challenges in life, the Quran says, Allah's bizikrullahi tatma'innul qulub. You find that when you remember Allah, your heart can become at rest. You can be comfortable, and you can be deal with the issues that are there. So when the Quran indicates to us and points out to us that there is a resurrection after death, it means not the resurrection of a physical self, but the resurrection of our soul. That sometimes our soul and our thoughts and our minds go into a state in which we find that I don't think I could recover, I can get out of this hole, I can move on. And that is why we need assistance from people. So people go to social workers, they go to psychiatrists or psychologists, as the case may be, or they go to parents, or they go to uncles or aunts or someone, counselors, who can guide them through the situations and they can come out. But the best guidance one can get is using the guidelines as given in the Quran. And that is why it is so important for us to realize that leaders, especially within the Muslim community, must not take the religion of Islam and the Quran for granted, that it's just a book of rituals. They have to read it and understand it, each and every one of us. Because each and every one of us, when we are counselor, we may have to deal with little children growing up, we may have to deal with boys and girls on the road. You may have to deal, even if you're a sports personality, as a captain of a team, and you have to deal with personalities. People are getting vexed, they're not functioning properly, they're cursing or ranting and raving. How do you deal with these things? And this is where guidance is needed in every aspect. You have to have the knowledge and the skills that are given to us by the Quran. Some people get their knowledge and skills of counseling via the books that they read, via education, reading philosophers, reading scriptures, reading, yes, all of that is good. But we need to appreciate and understand that the Quran gives us certain information that can be extremely helpful. And that is why whenever people have issues and problems, they should turn to their leaders, and leaders also should turn to the Quran to get the knowledge and skills to be able to assist people who have certain problems. I can give you an example of a young girl once rang me up many years ago, several years ago, perhaps 25 or 30 years ago. And she said to me, Maulana, you don't know me, but you teach Islamic knowledge in when I was a teenager in a school, and I know you. I don't know how she got my number, and she called. She said, I have a problem, problem in my home with my husband, and I have a very sick child, and I don't know what to do. So she said, but I can manage it right now, but when the time comes, I may need to come and talk to you. I said, okay. About a year passed, and then I got a call again from her. She said, well, I'm ready for you now. But I can't invite you home to talk to me. I don't want my husband to know that I'm consulting you. And can I meet you somewhere? I said, okay, if you can go to your father's home, I'll come there, tell me where the address is, I'll come and meet you and counsel. I went there and met her, and then the father said to her, that, look, what this girl is suffering, it's better she divorce your husband and stay. You have a home here, this is your parents' home. I gave her certain advice and said, if you make that, it might be a big mistake because you're independent now, you're married, and I gave her certain guidelines that what could happen if she divorces her husband and stays in her, more so what she stays in her father's home, what will happen. And later on in the same day, I got a call from the husband. I didn't know who he was, and he just said, I saw this number and I know my wife has said if she had problems, she will call this number, and I'm calling you to, because my wife is at home and I don't know where she is. So I said, okay. He came and at my home, and I had a long talk with him. I couldn't tell him I knew where his wife was, and I couldn't tell her that the husband had come to talk to me. But I arranged for them to come the next day, both of them, and bring them back together, and they reconciled. About 5 years afterwards, I met the husband, and he said to me, but I told the husband, he said his father told him he has a lot of money, and he said, I'll pay anything but divorce that girl. And he will pay all the expenses. About 5 years afterwards, I met the husband, and he said, you know, my wife and I were divorced. I said, why is it? And then he said, you know, my father said he'll pay everything, and he didn't pay a cent. I had to bear all the costs and go through all of this for myself. And exactly what you told me came true. Again, another couple of years passed, and then he called me again, and he said, you know, I visit my child at the mother's home, and I noticed she's not married again, and I am not married. And the look she gives me, I feel she still likes me, and I want to get married to her again. The problem is, in the Ashra community, when they got divorced, they said that she cannot marry him unless she gets married to somebody else, sleep with that individual, and then he divorces her, then he can marry her. That's their ruling with regards to divorce. He said, that's a problem I have, and I don't know what to do. So I said, okay, I showed him in the Quran that is wrong. From an Ahmadiyya perspective, that is incorrect. We have been clarifying this issue for a long while. And I showed him. He said, okay, I want you to convince my father, because he is very upset about this. Now he wants to, get involved. And he wants supporting me to get married, but this is a problem. I said, before you get married, however, I would like to talk to your wife, your former wife. They brought her, and I asked her the question. I said, do you want to marry him? She said, yes, I want to remarry him. I said, why? He said, well, let me tell you something, Maulana. First of all, for one part of my life, I listened to my parents. Wherever they went, they told me to go, what school, what subjects to take, whatever it is, I listened to them. Who to marry, I listened to them. I did make decisions of my own in life. And then the next part of my life, I lived with my husband. I listened to him. I obeyed him. And he abused me, took advantage of me. And I have a sick child, and that created a bigger problem. And the husband confessed to me that he was like that he did, and he was willing to change, and he did change to some extent. But she said, this is the time I am making my own decision. I am decided I will go back to my husband. He said, what you have told me about my parents when we were divorced and I went back to my parents' home, exactly what you told me occurred. And there were several things I told her, she said. And I had to leave there and go on my own and earn my own living and look after my child. And the husband used to come to visit me. So then the husband agreed that, look, his father should come and visit me because he wants to be convinced that the Quran guides him that he can remarry. So the father came, very prominent member of the Sunnatul Jamaat, very wealthy. And when I showed him the verse of the Quran, he was so upset. He said, these people have been misleading us. He went back and he called up all the Maulanas and them and said, I had to go to an Ahmadiyya Imam to tell me that the Quran permits my son to remarry his wife without her having to go through any other marriage. The husband had said to me, he said, you know, Maulana, I have to live among these people, and therefore I would like them to do the wedding rather than you. If not, I will want you to remarry us. So then the father, when he called up all the Maulanas and so on, they said, okay, they looked at the divorce papers again, said, okay, it's all right. She doesn't have to do that. And they got married, and I think they have been living happily ever after. The point is this, that even Maulanas sometimes give advice which it's just traditional, and they don't look after the interests and the nurturing of people. Here are two people willing to change their lives and live a better life, and let religion, Islam guide them, the Quran guide them into a better life. And Maulanas just felt that rituals is such that because some book says that when a man divorces a woman, if he says so 3 times, then talaq, 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 divorce, 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 you can't marry him again. Although we as members of the Ahmadiyya movement says you could say talaq 50 times, there's still one occasion of divorce. It's if you divorce and you remarry, and you divorce and you remarry and you divorce a 3rd time. I mean, you can't play around with marriage and people's lives like that. You give them 3 opportunities to make the marriage work, and if that doesn't work, then your divorce is irrevocable, except special circumstances perhaps may arise later on and you have no choice but to remarry. In that case, that limitation is placed there, which is indeed far off and very rare and unusual circumstances, but it's a provision that is there. So it is important for us to realize that knowing and understanding the Quran is not only necessary for us to function in life, but we must know that there are people who study the Quran and who are willing to utilize the guidance of the Quran to help you through health problems and financial problems. You know that there are some people when they are ill, sometimes they don't come to mosque, they don't go to church, they don't go to mandir, but when they are ill, they want the priest, the pandit or the imam to come and say a prayer for them. At that time they realize when there is no material assistance, we need some spiritual guidance. They go to a faith healer, they go to a preacher, they go to some crusade or so, and believe that these prayers can really, you do some kind of novena, some kind of special prayer, and you find that everything will be okay. But that is not what religion teaches us. No religion, none at all, teaches this. It teaches us that the real resuscitation of ourselves is how we handle our souls. So if my soul is dead, and the Quran says, the Prophet Muhammad tells us, say, I invite you to that which gives you life. And life doesn't mean physical life, it means moral and spiritual life. I can teach you what the Quran says, that if you are unable to forgive, I will show you how to forgive. As he did in the case of when he conquered Makkah and said to the people, this day I say unto you, as Joseph said to his brothers, I forgive you. Joseph forgave his brothers. So even if you have been in very difficult circumstances, as Joseph was in the bottom of a pit, he was also in prison, but yet still he didn't die. His soul that possesses the attribute of Allah's attributes of forgiveness was still alive and kept alive through all these situations. So that patience, forgiveness, kindness, charity, mercy, all of these are attributes. They sometimes die within us, and we find it difficult to give. We find we can make ourselves stingy. We find we are impatient. We are anxious. We are become argumentative and angry and developing hatred, and we can't see our way. And we see that all over the world, not only with Muslims, but people generally. They don't know how to use religions to build their personality and their soul. And so we as members of the Ahmadiyya movement, this is one thing we specialize in, that we focus on human personality development. That is why it is so important for us to belong to an organization and a group that can understand this principle and provide services that can help us. And therefore, we have to make use of these services. We have to make use of our leaders. We have to make use of our spiritual guides who are there. And there are many. I am not the only one. There are others who are giving counseling and can help people in any situation whatsoever to make them live a better life and make themselves happy, so that you enjoy heaven in this world as well as in the next world. So resurrection in the Quran really means giving us life again, giving us the opportunity to grow with our attributes that are within us, the attributes that have come from God, that will remain for us, with us, even after we die. Those attributes will be there and continue to grow until they merge with Allah. Because our attributes as we grow them will not be perfect. Allah is a perfect being. We may only have 5 or 10% of forgiveness or kindness or charity or truth or whatever it is in us. But as we move on to the next life, opportunities will be given to us for those qualities to grow and grow and grow, and it's unending. So that it is important for us to movement, and this is why Allah said the Mujaddid. We have been given a different approach to the religion of Islam, an approach that will help us make us better and happier human beings in this world as well as in the life hereafter. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quran al-Azim wa nafa'ana wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikril hakim. Innahu ta'ala jawadun kareem malikun barrufur rahim. Alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi. Wa na'udzu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil fala hadiya lahu. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa nashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma ansur man nasara deen Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam waj'alna minhum. Allahumma aghzul man khazala deen Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa la taj'alna minhum. I have been speaking in my khutbah about spiritual death and resurrection, but that does not mean that we ignore the fact that in our material life there is death and there can be resurrection too. But just as in the case of our spiritual death, we have to take certain steps. Similarly, in our physical and material life, we have to take certain steps. We know that there has been reports of people who have been infected with the dengue fever, and some have died recently, and quite a lot of young people. And it is therefore important for us to take whatever precautions are necessary that our children and ourselves don't get infected by this. Not only, well, we know how it is caused, you can read up about it or you can read the guidelines given, but particularly we need to appreciate that what is stated about the Aedes aegypti mosquito living in clean and stagnant water. It doesn't live in drains and so on. You may find mosquitoes in drains that can bite you, but they wouldn't give you, or at least the ones in Trinidad would not give you dengue. I got dengue in Guyana with the same ordinary mosquito that gave it to me some years ago. So I understand and I know what people can go through. And can give a very fast death. So we want to ask Allah to guide us, give us the guidelines and the necessary information so that we can protect ourselves from this disease and have a healthy Jamaat and community. And I don't wish that any one of you should really suffer. And if you do take immediate steps to get attention as soon as possible. Alhamdulillah nahmadu. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsani wa ita'i zil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi. Ya'izukum la'allakum tadhakkarun. Uzkurullaha yazkurkum. Wad'uhu yastajib lakum wa la zikrullahi a'la.